Are the Miami Dolphins targeting a big name tight end prospect in the draft? There's more news coming out of the Texas Pro Day, and we are going to talk about that. Also, the Miami Dolphins met with OBJ, concluded their visit with OBJ. So, what now? We will talk about that. Also, a prominent wide receiver says the Miami Dolphins are being very cap conscious as they hunt for that number 3. We'll talk about that and so much more as me and Neal Driscoll dive fin too deep with all of you. So do us a favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's get into this.
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown.
And he will score. Field on the near side, that open touchdown. The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown. He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown. He's in.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming and get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the 6th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We are back here for another one. And, well, Neal, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke. The Miami Dolphins, man, it is the news has ramped up just when we thought entering that second wave it might slow down. The Miami Dolphins have dipped their toes into the wide receiver 3 market, and they're looking for a splash. They're not looking for a small move. Plus, we got some draft talk we got to cover. And, I don't know if you saw yesterday, I dropped my first big board of the season, my defensive tackle big board. So, how you feeling, man? Because, listen, we are about a month and a week away from the draft as well. So, things are starting to ramp up right now.
Yeah, man, it's awesome, man. It's a great time. I'm like everyone else. I'm on Odell watch here, refreshing, making sure I don't miss anything here. But yeah, man, April for me, it's going to be an unbelievable month, man. I love the draft. I'm more excited about this year's draft probably than I've been in a while. Not, we haven't had a first round pick in 2 years, but I also just think this draft class is just unbelievable in the first couple rounds, man. And I just have a feeling something magical could work out for the Dolphins, even if they stay pat at pick 21. Yeah, man, it's great, man. And I was saying this earlier today when I was in a conversation. There's really 4 buckets to me of where you can add players to your roster. There's the first wave of free agency. I think the Dolphins have done a B+ to A- job in adding players during free agency. Then there's the draft. Then there's the post-June world where the Dolphins are going to probably be operating with $31 million in cap space. And then there's a trade deadline where you can go out and accumulate players. So, I think we're through the first phase here of the kind of Dolphins roster building. But, I think they're going to have a good draft, and I think they're going to be players to sign some veterans in post-June. So I always say, man, let the whole story play out. Like, I feel really good about where the Dolphins roster is heading for now and for the future. So big month ahead. A lot of draft talk, obviously. I know you did your first board with defensive tackle. I can't wait, man. The defensive tackle, the offensive tackle, the interior offensive line, the wide receiver class, the quarterback class. I mean, this draft is just loaded. Edge class. I mean, it's a good draft, man. So, I'm beyond excited for the next 30 days of life, and then I'm only 2.5 weeks away from going to, or 3 weeks at this point, of going away to
Oh
WrestleMania
yeah,
with
WrestleMania.
my little guys. So,
Nice.
a lot of cool stuff, man.
Shout out to Knight. He gifted a Finside the NFL membership. Shout out to D Hugga. He also gifted a Finside the NFL membership.
Wow.
Guys, go utilize it. Go under the community tab. Go check out all the latest info, or use the emojis that are exclusive to you as a member of Finside the NFL on YouTube. All right. Let's start getting into this, because we do have quite a bit to cover. Now let's start off between, and shout out to all of you between YouTube and Twitter. We're sitting at about 630 people watching us right now, so shout out to all of you coming through. So let's start off right now with this, and it came out this morning that Odell Beckham, we got the time frame. He was at the facility bright and early, Neil. 7:57 a.m. Diana Rossini, Athletic Insider, was already tweeting out that Odell Beckham was currently at the Miami Dolphins facility. Now, keeping up with the story, it was interesting because we got more of the news trickle in. Later on in the day, about 3 hours later, Barry Jackson said Odell Beckham has always been their first choice. Other conversation was exploratory if nothing came of Odell. And he's talking about another conversation we'll talk about in a bit. And then just before we went live for everyone, Neil, we got word from Barry Jackson just about a little under an hour ago that, per team source, the Dolphins meeting with Odell Beckham Jr. went well today. Team pleased how meeting went. Miami hopes to sign him. We'll see if they can agree on price. Now, we know there's mutual interest. We knew yesterday there was a little bit of a gap on pricing. Where are you at with this? Because, I see people are already jumping to the conclusion. He got out of he's not signed yet. He hasn't left Miami yet, but he's not signed yet. He's about the money, What are your thoughts on this? Because we still have, they could literally, they've clearly exchanged numbers, Neil, and it could be as simple as, okay, we can come up to that. Just let us rework Tyreek right now, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's another reason, another thing not a lot of people are talking about, Neil. Tyreek mentioned Michael Thomas as somebody he wanted to add last week, right? So clearly he's got an eye on adding another, name to that room. I think Tyreek Hill is more willing to restructure or extend if they say, hey, your restructure extension allows us to add Odell Beckham to the group.
Yeah, man, look, you got to be patient in situations, first and foremost. They had a long meeting today. What do you look at? Like almost a 6-hour plus meeting. There's a lot to bake out. There's injuries, there's medicals with Odell Beckham. You got to get a feel for those. There's obviously contract demands. The Dolphins aren't coming here with a blank check saying, welcome to Miami, Odell.
Yeah.
But, for me, I think it gets done, and there's various reasons why. First, I have it from a very good contact here in Baltimore that when Odell posted his goodbye to Baltimore, a lot of people thought that Miami would be one of the first teams he'd go to because he has a place there. And I heard that he has an admiration for the game of Tua Tagovailoa. So that matters. Get back to the Dolphins being a destination and people wanting to play with Tua. Look, it makes so much sense for Odell. Why would you not want to come to the number one passing attacking offense? And you're only going to get a 1-year deal here in Miami. So why don't you put up big stats and go out and cash in again next year? It just makes sense. And, look, would I like to see the contract come across my timeline right now so that we don't have to play and wait? Being a Dolphins fan, we know this, man. This is how it goes. They keep us on our toes. They keep us on ice here, man. And that's, I think the deal's going to get done. I know they've exchanged numbers. Barry Jackson made that very clear in the tweet that you just shared.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they're still talking tells me that they're just probably trying to cut down somewhere in the middle and make this happen. It's a win-win for Odell. It's a win-win for the Dolphins. I just think that there's too much smoke, too much fire about getting this done. I'd be shocked if Odell Beckham doesn't get here. And I'm not trying to mean this in a degrading way. How many people are banging down on Odell's door right now, right? Like, it didn't seem like he had a lot of interest before his visit to Miami. And we'll talk more about why we think it's a good fit. But, like, I'm under the belief that this is going to get done. And I think it gets done probably, if not tonight, sometime tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, that goes into this, as you said, medicals, and I mean, so like my whole thing with this is, I see people like they're still not a fan of the fit or whatever. The more I've thought about it, the more I've become a fan. Again, he allows you to flex Tyreek and Waddle more into the slot. He gives you a legitimate boundary guy that can win at the catch point. He's got surer hands. I mean, you saw the stat that Alf posted. Yep. I mean, he's never dropped. He in his career, he doesn't have one single drop in the red zone.
Yeah,
and he has one drop in the playoffs in his career.
There's three pillars why I like Odell Beckham to Miami, and I'm with you. At first, I was like, "What? Why Odell?" Like, and I don't pay attention to any team like I pay attention to the Miami Dolphins, but I do like the NFL in general, and I pay attention to the league. And again, I live here in Baltimore. When the Ravens signed him and they paid $15 million, I was like, dude, that's crazy. I don't get it. Like, the guy's coming off of this, but pillar one of why I like it is because I know what he did to the Ravens locker room. He was a key figure in it, and actually, he gets a lot of credit for being the person that mended the fences between the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. We all remember just a year ago, Lamar Jackson was writing goodbye letters to Baltimore. It didn't look like they were going to get done, where the Ravens are going to allow him to seek a trade. And then magically they signed Odell Beckham Jr. And the next thing we know, Lamar Jackson's got a new contract and he's happy. And he was a big time presence in that locker room in Baltimore, second on the field as a number 3 wide receiver here. Because in Baltimore, he was picked to be the 1 or 2, right? That was the truth. Here, he'd be the 3. He had more receiving yards with only 35 receptions than Cedric Wilson, Chase Claypool, and Braxton Berrios combined. I would say that if you watch the Ravens game tape and you watch the All-22, you will see that the MVP of this football league isn't really good at hitting open receivers. And, that's just the truth. Beckham, Bateman, they were open a lot more. It seemed like Lamar was force-feeding, Andrews before he got hurt and Zay Flowers and missing some downfield throws that I'm very confident that a quarterback wearing number 1 here in Miami would hit.
Yeah.
Third, I think it's huge for this reason, man. The presence he brings to your organization, he brings instant credibility. It's not all about his play on the field, but when Odell Beckham's there, he's got championship pedigree all the way back from his time in LSU. He's the type of dude, man, that like he makes others around him better, right? Can you imagine what we would see from this wide receiver group at practice with Waddle, Hill, Berrios, Eric Uzakonma, River, Craycraft, with Odell Beckham driving these people to get better? I just think the more that I think about it, as a number 3 receiver, this could be one of those moves during the course of the season when people are like, holy shit, like the Dolphins just absolutely stole Odell Beckham. And I would argue that number 3 receiver is as big of a need on this football team right now as any position, including offensive line and defensive tackle.
Okay, so before we get into that, what you just said, because that's a good segue, can you read to people what you tweeted out yesterday in regards to read the numbers, Odell Beckham's yardage compared to the receivers we had in the room when you combine them? Let everyone know what those numbers are.
Let me get there because I know it was for the Odell Beckham, it was 565 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
It was correct.
And then for between Chase Claypool, Braxton Berrios, and Cedric Wilson's, I think it was 560 yards.
He had 5 more yards than those. I actually had someone, I had someone in my comments today trying to say to my post that he's not much of an upgrade over Cedric Wilson.
That's crazy.
I said he had more yards last year than Cedric Wilson had in 2 years in Miami, and you're trying to tell me he's not an upgrade. Let's not talk about the hands or what he can do at the catch point. You're trying to tell me that's not an upgrade. Like, people are so – because you know what I'm telling you? People are still stuck on who OBJ was on the yacht. People are still stuck on that. They forget, right? Mike McDaniel's getting a rousing voice of approval on the matter from Sean McVay after the time in LA that Odell had. Odell, people forget, 113 yards and was a beast against the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship, and then made that touchdown play that he tore his ACL on in the Super Bowl, okay? People forget how good he was in that run and what him and Stafford were starting to do. Number one, y'all forget that. Number two, someone show me if he's been a headache. Show me if he's been a headache in LA or Baltimore. Number three, if you want to say his time in Cleveland, wouldn't you be a headache in Cleveland? Wouldn't you want to get out of Cleveland? Cleveland's a place where not only quarterbacks, we've seen quarterbacks go there for over 20 years to die, but we all knew Odell Beckham going there, it wasn't a good fit because that was Landry's unit. It pushed everything around. It just wasn't a fit. And now it was the first year he had over 1,000 yards. But then the injuries piled up. You saw his father complain about how he's being used, and they got rid of him. It wasn't even Odell. It was his father said something. So this whole – because I know all of these people, if they were stuck in Cleveland for 1 or 2 years, Neil, we got over 1,200 people watching us, okay, between X and YouTube. If these people were stuck in Cleveland for 2 years, they'd want to get the hell out too. Let's not lie to ourselves right now.
Wait, so you're telling me that a guy became a professional in the NFL for 10 years and he actually matured and it's not the player he was or the person he was?
What a novel thought, huh?
Right. Like sure, at 23 years old, I was closing down bars, running down College Park, Route 1 Avenue with my pants off. Like life, everyone gets a little bit better and they mature, right? Like that's what happens. Yeah. I think that what we've seen out of him, Odell, has been a lot of growth as a person. And, now him at 31 years, who's had a lot of success in this league professionally and off the field, a lot of young players look up to him. He's a leader. He's a leader. He's got the mentality. We overutilize two words in covering football, elite and dogs. Like those are the two most overused words. Whatever that presence that the Dolphins have lacked in their locker room, he brings that. He knows how to win. He knows how to build winners and be on a part of a winner. He knows his role. And one thing I saw in the chat, like, no, I disagree that Odell was brought in to be the number 2. Look, he got paid $15 million to be the number 1 in Baltimore. They drafted Zay Flowers to be the number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Bateman's been discouraging. Now Zay Flowers just really became a stud as a rookie, and I think a lot of us thought that might happen there.
Yeah.
But Odell was brought there to be the guy.
Number 1.
And one of my best friends told me this today. He called me and we're talking about this. And he's like, man, I know that you thought he was washed up. But one thing I want to tell you is from an outside perspective is that when it's 3rd and 7 and you need that tough catch for a first down and Tua needs to put the ball on a slant or on the boundary, Odell Beckham's your guy. He's your guy.
Yeah,
you don't have that guy. Sure, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill can burn.
Especially from what the hands Tyreek showed me he has in big games and big moments. That's the guy.
and then, this is a move, again, where I think Odell could play on a pitch count, for lack of a better term. And when it's December and it's cold, or it's January and it's cold, and I just feel like he's a guy that we could really gravitate towards. Like, I'll tell you what, I've done a complete 360.
Yeah, so have I. I've grown hot on this, and I started off cold 2 days ago when I was up here naming, because when the rumors came out 2 days ago that we were chasing a well-known, remember it was Barry tweeted a well-known wide receiver. We were going over on this channel, who could it be? Odell, Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark. We were going over Hunter Renfrow, McCole Hardman. Those are really the only big names
Tyler
left,
wants
right?
big money. Tyler wants pretty big money.
I know Tyler Boyd's up
Tyler
there.
Boyd,
So do I, bro. He was on my list. He was in my top 3 receivers. It was Curtis Samuel, who I think was one of the best moves the Bills made all season.
Made a great move.
Darnell Mooney and Tyler Boyd were the 3 guys I wanted. But I've grown on OBJ. as I've thought about it, as I've thought what he'll allow Mike McDaniel and this offense to do. But, let's talk about a few things. The third down thing. What was one of the reasons why I want Hunter Renfrow? Third and Renfrow, right? I want a guy we can convert on third down. I've said this. We got surer and stickier hands with him than we do with Waddle or Tyreek, and especially in big moments. And the other key thing here is kind of expanding on what you said. People are getting lost of, he's not what he was 6. I don't need Odell from 6 years ago. I need Odell to get me 500 to 800 yards. I don't need 1,000-yard receiver. That's Waddle's the second guy that's supposed to be getting me over 1,000 yards. I need 6 to 800. But if he can land in 500 to 800 and he can add 4, 5, 6 touchdowns to that, I've got what I needed out of Odell. That's what I need.
And that's an important topic right there. Reason is that Odell Beckham can find the end zone. And I know he had 3 touchdowns in Baltimore, but his career has shown that. Like, I the more I think about it, the more it makes so much sense. And what Alf just said there, I agree, and that's what I said a few minutes ago. Like, Lamar's the MVP of this league, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but
listen,
he missed a lot of targets in Baltimore this year.
It's the same reason why we don't want Justin Fields in Miami. The reason why we said Mike McDaniel would have to change our whole offense and everything that he does and everything's predicated over. Lamar Jackson isn't a guy you are going to ask to make accurate timing throws. That's not part of his repertoire. Now he's a bit of a better processor than Justin Fields, but I don't even think they're at the level you want pre or post snap processing. Add in with that, you're not going to ask him to make those accurate timing throws over the middle of the field because that's not a strong suit. They're not fits. But what Odell does, Tua is more of a fit to his skill set. The way we've seen, it's been proven over the last 2 years, Tua is more of a fit to the skill set of Tyreek than Mahomes was.
Yeah, and what you're doing, Reason, is that you are putting defenses on their heels because you already have a hell of a problem covering Tyreek Hill no matter who you are.
Yeah.
And then when he's on the field with Waddle, it makes it even harder. And now they've added Jonnu Smith that's going to get paired with linebackers and safeties. And then you pull.
Remember the interception because he ran the bad route?
And then you pull a guy like Odell, who's a savvy veteran that can run that and push Waddle into the slot a little bit. Like you have 4 targets now, and like defenses can't. And we're going to talk about the draft and maybe another target potentially on the radar as well. And you're starting to see, to what I said 5 weeks ago, that was my whole MO of this offseason, is I saw a great Ravens defense not be able to beat Kansas City at home because Pat Mahomes is going to get his. He's that good. Doesn't matter how good your defense is, they won't stop Mahomes. The way to beat Mahomes is to give an offense that can keep up and score with them. And I think what the Dolphins are doing is they're playing smart. They're signing smart, savvy players that are going to have the opportunity to flourish here because of what we have on the outside with Waddle and Hill. Because of Waddle and Hill, Jonnu Smith could have the best year of his career.
Yeah,
because
and OBJ can feast.
OBJ could come in here and say, you know what? I'm going to get another nice 1-year contract. He's now in that Ndamukong Suh mercenary.
Yeah.
He's like that now. And man, I'll be honest, like at first I was kind of lukewarm to it. Now I'm like, man, I really hope to see this come across because I think it just makes us even more dangerous April for the draft, man. Like when you are playing where you can literally select the best player on the board, no matter who that is. And Odell on a 1-year deal is not going to stop you from taking Brian Thomas if he's on the board. Like this, the one thing that we have to understand, it goes to the basics of this. We're fans. We love the Dolphins. We view the team a lot different than the people that actually run the football team.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, right? Like I think Liam Eichenberg, I wouldn't want him on the high school that I'm the general manager for, but the Dolphins like him, right? And that is what it is.
Let me ask you this. Do you think I think Jack Driscoll is going to give him a run for his money at right guard? I don't think he's locked in at right. I think Jack Driscoll might beat him at right guard if it's just those 3 and they don't add anyone.
Well, if he got the number 0 or the number 1, I would already have a Jack Driscoll jersey. But I don't know what number he's going to go for, but I will. If he makes the roster, I'm on record.
I think he's going to. I think at minimum, I think they see him as a swing.
I think he's honestly, man, on par or maybe even a slight upgrade to Kendall Lamb. And I love Kendall Lamb.
That's what I think they view him as, the replacement for Kendall Lamb.
I mean, he's a tough lunch pail type player, man. And
Yeah.
I'm going back to his
His
Auburn.
best tape is at right guard in the NFL, Neil.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we were saying it's kind of what I was saying with Isaiah Wynn last year. That's what I'm getting the feeling of all over again.
I think, dude, I honestly think this, and I think they will probably add a receiver at some point in the draft. But I think 100% that they're okay going with the offensive line like it is into the season.
I think they're looking at adding one more piece, but I think you're pretty much dead on there. I think
it could
they
be
might
a post-June guy. Connor Williams.
I think they're going to add another interior player.
Right.
Like, because at left guard, I don't think it's not just going to be Isaiah Wynn. I see them adding another interior player. I think they view you want me to be honest with you, bro? I think they view the starting lineup right now as Armstead, Wynn, Brewer, Driscoll, and then what's his face? Jackson. And I think they view Robert Jones can play either guard spot, and they view Eichenberg as a guy who's the backup to Brewer and can be a backup to a guard spot as well. That's honestly,
and they like Keon Smith. They like Keon Smith, man. They've kept him around here, and he's he's put on some decent. I'm with you though. I think if you go out and get one more guy, whether it's second round of the draft or a veteran free agent,
or if a tackle falls to 21 that can play guard in the first year, you take that.
Right. Like I and we'll talk draft, but I'm on record that the Dolphins probably won't go offensive line unless Troy Fontenot falls. If Fontenot's there, and honestly,
or an Olufashnu or one of those big tackles. All right, they love J.C. Latham.
Right.
I don't know how much they love. I know they love Graham Barton, but do they love him enough for 21? Because I've heard they're pretty freaking high on that kid.
Troy Fontenot, to me, is the number one player that could fall to the Dolphins that would switch their whole mindset. Like, I think they're going to go defense unless Troy Fontenot falls in their lap. And that's just how I see it. Now, I also think that they're playing good poker right now. But you can see the people that they're meeting with. And people will say there's no way Troy Fontenot will be there at 21. Look, man, when I do a mock draft, I'm just telling you, it's hard to fit them in before the Dolphins. It is. Like, it's hard because when you do a predictive
especially if Bowers drops, you could have a team that needs a tackle pivot.
Well, look, if you do a predictive mock draft, which means you're doing a mock draft to what you think is going to happen.
The ones we do every year when we do our 3-round mock. Yeah.
Right. Like, because I honestly, like, I do a mock draft that it's my way of thinking, and that's just me getting my ideas on paper. But like when the real mock draft that I'll submit when it's time to submit it to see how your grade is will be on what I think will happen. And what I think is going to happen is you're going to see 4 quarterbacks, 5 wide receivers. We're at 9, right? 5 offensive tackles at 14, 2 pass rushers. We're at 16. Brock Bowers.
Who's your 5th
17.
receiver you got going? Who's your 5th receiver?
I think Adonai Mitchell's going to go ahead of us. I think Adonai Mitchell might go ahead of Brian Thomas, and that's not how I think, but I think that he's getting that type of.
See, I've heard top 12 rumblings on Brian Thomas, bro.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oh, I think he should and will. And
I only have 4 first-round graded wide receivers, so I would not be taking Adonai Mitchell in the top 20.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but see, he's one of those guys that I think is what we want to happen. A guy that's going to move up.
Yeah, because you think he has bust potential, right? You told me you think he has bust potential.
I'm not like. Look, I'll say this.
I like Xavier Legette and McConkey better than him, but
yeah, I like both those guys better than him too. And I actually, I like Xavier Worthy, but I think it's kind of like a repetition of what we already have. Like I could
even the
Mike
hands.
Yeah, I think Mike McDaniel could like him a lot.
Yeah.
But I think what we're just went through that exercise. I just named 18 people without even looking at paper. I didn't put any defensive tackles down there. I didn't put the fact that I think, but there's a real chance Bo Nix could go in the top 15.
You didn't name any corners.
I didn't name any corners. So that tells me by the law of averages, unless the draft goes the absolute worst thing. And that means to me in that scenario, if Jared Verse and Dallas Turner are going to go, that means Troy Fontenot, Jackson Powers Johnson, and Latu, and Jerzon Newton would all be on the board when the Dolphins pick at 21. I mean, that's a home run scenario to pick between those 4 guys.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad anyway. I would say this. I have a hard time passing on Troy Fontenot because I think that when we look at all pros in 2026, 2025 even, and we're looking, I think Troy Fontenot is going to be one of the best offensive linemen in the league. I think he's going to be an
He could be he could be a top 3 guard in 2 years, or he could be a top 10 tackle. That's what he looks like. Yeah,
you know what I think he is? If he plays at guard, I think he's going to be the interior offensive line version of what Penei Sewell was to the Lions.
Lot to unpack there with what you just said.
Love the draft though, man. It's a great draft, man. It is a great draft.
Yeah, it's I know, eh? It's and it's coming up fast, bro. It's coming up because here's where I'm at. Like, I've been pushing. How long have I been talking about Latu on this channel for? I have. Yeah. Right? Okay. Because we were the first ones talking about this on this show months ago. We were the first ones saying, watch edge at 21. When everyone was talking about Jackson Powers-Johnson, we were saying, watch edge and watch receiver as this 2 sneaky picks, okay? And this is where I'm at, bro. This is where I've settled at 21 if we're going edge. You either give me Latu, the technician, the refined technician, the high floor guy, or you're going to think I'm crazy. Just invest in the raw potential of Chop, because a guy I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. Think about this, Neil. Okay, we can use Ceylon Farrell as an example or whatever, but 10, 12 years ago, you're a draft guy. Guys with the tools Chop has would go in the top 10, top 12.
Absolutely.
The NFL's kind of learned a little bit, so that makes it easy. 21, listen, you got a guy who's Micah Parsons level. Remember, people who are watching this channel, I was talking about a Micah Parsons a year before he entered the draft and telling everyone how special this kid was going to be. You're talking about a guy who's got that type of ceiling, that type of athleticism, and he's 20 pounds heavier, bro. Like, that's specialness. And why I'll push it even more for you, Neil. Let me put this thought in your head, food for thought. We got Anthony Weaver. You saw what he did with Matabuki. You see what he does with defensive linemen. If anyone's going to get this kid to that ceiling, Anthony Weaver is the guy you want to draft a guy like Chop for.
Well, and look, here's something that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know. Look what the Ravens have drafted. They've been all over Penn State. They drafted when Anthony Weaver was at Baltimore, and that working with the scouting department there. Let me tell you that the Dolphins have great intel on Chop Robinson. The Ravens pay attention a lot to the local schools. Penn State, that's one of the factories where they found talent. They've done a great job of utilizing that. I'm with you. The burst that Chop brings to the table is special, and he could be definitely a player on the radar. He could be another guy that I'm just saying that if he went to Seattle at 16, it wouldn't surprise me because of what traits and tools he brings to the table. And I'll be honest, man, there's top 4 pass rushers. I would not be upset with any of them. I'll tell you what I think about Latu though, and I've really started to watch a lot of them because we've all seen the things that are going out there, and I would say personally that I think he's the clubhouse leader to be the first round pick right now. A lot of people are like, he's got the same size. He went to UCLA. It reminds me of Joe Phillips. I actually have higher praise for him than that. When I watch him, because of his build, because of his refined technique, the way he gets around the corner, how he does it, his hands. It reminds me of TJ Watt. It reminds me of TJ Watt a little bit. I see a lot of TJ Watt in him, and that's the ultimate compliment that I can give anybody. Because we all probably wanted TJ Watt over Charles Harris many moons ago, but I see that type of player, man. The motor never runs cold. His hands are so strong, dude. I don't really see. A lot of people worry about what a pass rusher does against the run, and Latu's more than adequate against the run. But I don't really give a shit about that, right? No one really pays attention to how good TJ Watt is or not against the run. Do what you're supposed to do. Get a sack every game. At the end of the year, you have 17 sacks. No one's ever going to give you shit, right? So I think it's a big thing. And that pass rush makes so much sense for Chris Grier. He loves premium positions. That makes so much sense. I'm leaning to think that if we draft at 21, that we are going to take a pass rusher. Now, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. It just makes sense, man. And they're getting out ahead of what they want to do with Chubb down the line, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And reason, even if you keep Chubb next year on top of it, who is going to be upset with the fact that we have Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, and Latu, or Dallas Turner, or Chop Robinson, or Jared Verse? Who's going to be upset about that? You can employ 3 pass rushers Anthony Weaver, it gets very exciting when you think about the next level of what this defense could evolve into by getting the right talent in here.
Yeah, agreed. We got over 1,100 people watching on Twitter. We got over 600 people watching on YouTube right now. Sitting at about 1,703 people. Please do us a favor, smash the like button. Subscribe if you are new. As you know, we're getting close to 15,000 on the channel. We're creeping. We are only about, let me see here. We're about, I think, I am about 54 away from 15,000.
Damn.
There.
All
right.
The draft for sure, right?
Before the draft for sure, man. So probably by the end of this month for sure. A little bit more on OBJ because there's something in here I wanted to talk about. There's a little piece in here. So from Barry Jackson's 6-pack of notes, we'll just cover the first one here. The Dolphins meeting with 3-time Pro Bowl receiver Odell Beckham Jr. went well on Thursday, according to a team source. The mutual interest remains strong. Miami remains interested in signing him, and the key thing is mutual interest right there. The question is whether they can see eye to eye on what he should be paid. The sides have discussed financial terms, but no agreement had been reached as of late afternoon on Thursday. Here you go. This is what I want to talk about with you, Neal. Another prominent free agent receiver who spoke with the Dolphins said he was left with the impression, see, this feels like a Tyler Boyd or someone now we're talking about, right? With the impression that the Miami Dolphins don't want to spend a lot at that position, even though one important person in the Dolphins hierarchy would like to add a highly skilled number 3 receiver and loves Beckham. So
what I'm hearing, man, I'm just telling you, as I'm hearing, a deal's going to get done. That's what I'm hearing. When you say that and you listen to it, the Dolphins are going to put out there through Barry Jackson, they're hoping to sign Odell Beckham Jr. unless they think it's in striking distance. That's just, why would you want to put egg on your face as a franchise, right? Like, you got, like, the context is very important. Everything sounds to me is that there's a small gap of guaranteed money that they have to figure out. And I think it's going to get done. It wouldn't shock me if 8 o'clock tonight you're sitting on your couch watching March Madness, and the breaking news that comes across your ticker is that Odell Beckham is a Miami Dolphin. Like, he's not out of town. He's there. He's got a place there. I know it's not his primary residence, but he has a place there. Like, he's probably spending the night here. His agent's probably continuing to work with the Dolphins. The Dolphins are putting out way too much of their interest. They don't do this. Teams don't put out their interest in players if they can't get deals done. Not saying it's never happened, but when's the last time we've heard about a Dolphins planning a visit with a player and their best beat writer, Barry Jackson, I love Barry, so I'm going to put that out there, is going to sit out there and put this out and put the clarity that he is around this. Look, it's going to get done, man, and I'm excited for it, and I think it's a hell of a way to end March here and get ready for April, man, because I feel like you look at it, and when we have it and the ink is dried, we're looking at yet another very solid player added to this team when a month ago we were $52 million over the salary cap. So there's a lot of Chris Grier bashing that goes on in this community, and I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm saying if you look at how he's leveraged a first-round pick since 2019, and that's Wilkins, Tua, Austin, Tyreek, Bradley Chubb, Waddle, Phillips. The only mistake he's ever really made in the first round probably is Noah Igbinoghene. It's in 2019. These deals he's signing, Reason, are so good because they're short-term deals that make you better today, but they allow you the flexibility to continue to build via the draft and sign your old players that you want to keep, like Waddle and Holland. Like, I actually think Chris Grier is operating at a very high level. Very high level.
See, here's my issue. Like, you know what I get him on him for? Not getting out ahead of contracts.
Right.
Like, I get him out. I get on him for general manager stuff. What I don't understand in this fan base is why people blame him for the losing. That's not his job to coach this talent or to perform this. He gives you the groceries. It's up to you to make the 5-star meal. When you talk about wins, that comes down to the coaches and the players. Chris Grier and the rosters, everyone was raving about the great roster he put together last year. That's his job. His job is the performance is not on him. Like, injuries are not on him. That's on the training staff and the players again. So he catches way too much flack for not winning when he's put good enough rosters. Let's be honest. If Flores would have just beat either Jacksonville or Atlanta in his last year, we enter the playoffs. So he's put together playoff teams for both his last two coaches, playoff quality rosters, and quite frankly, they've underachieved under the coaching. Now we've gone over Mike McDaniel's flaws. We've gone over Brian Flores' flaws. They have their own, as different as they may be, and it's cost us in certain situations and in certain big moments. So my whole thing with Grier is he gets way too much flack for the losing when you look at the rosters he's feeling. But and then the draft, the thing I can't get is people want to hit on him for the draft when his players are getting paid. Christian Wilkins getting wide receiver money at defensive tackle, and Robert Hunt's getting wide receiver money at freaking right guard. So that tells you how good he's been drafting. And now you got Javon Holland up, which if we don't give him the bag, someone will. Waddle will get the bag if we don't give it to him. And Phillips will get the bag if we don't give it to him. So I don't know. And Tua will get the bag if we don't give it to him. So I don't understand this thought that he can't draft either, because a lot of his players are getting paid. Now, if you want to talk about the draft and him, where he misses, Chris Grier can hit grand slams and home runs on starters. Where he misses is building depth through the draft.
Right.
And that comes with either drafting the wrong depth guys, or he does not draft starters early enough as depth guys and then rotate them in as a starter and let guys get paid somewhere else. Those are the two issues he has with drafting depth.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I don't know what it's either a lack of how the operations of football work or a witch hunt against Chris Grier, because you nailed it, man. Like, Chris Grier, the chef is Mike McDaniel and his coaching staff. And Chris Grier is to go out and get the groceries, and you give them to the coach and you say, go make me a Michelin star meal. And that's how it works. Now, I'm not going to get up here and act like Chris Grier hasn't made mistakes, and I think you nailed it. Some of the contracts he probably tried to get out front of. Now, what we do know is that he tried to get Christian Wilkins and he tried to get Robert Hunt, and the money we've seen that they got paid on the open market versus where the Dolphins were was a huge delta to alleviate. So at the end of the day, like, I'm with you, man. I think he gets too much. And I think as fans, and I include myself in this, like, I'll take nothing less than a playoff win this year. Well, I took 2 weeks off Twitter and I came right back, and I can't wait for the football. So at the end of the day, I'm not going anywhere. So these false hope statements that we make, they're not real.
Well,
we're
Neal,
be back.
Is he doing such a bad job that Drew Rosenhaus goes on TV on the Joe Rose show and tells everyone that Braxton Berrios, Shaq Barrett, Jordan Poyer, and Jonnu Smith all took less money on the open market to play here in Miami?
Well, I think it was 6 months ago we did a show, and we were talking all about how Miami's becoming the destination to come play in the NFL. And we're seeing it. And we see our own fan base torn on whether to pay Tua a contract or not. Well, let me tell you from the outside, a lot of players want to come here and play. A lot of players come here and play. And they know who the quarterback is. And I would say this, when you talk about Odell Beckham Jr., he ain't coming to a place if he doesn't have faith in the quarterback getting him the ball. He ain't going to do that himself, right?
Exactly. And you think he ain't asking Tyreek what he thinks, Neal?
Right. And that's what – so like this is a destination. So, sure, we have not got that playoff win. We haven't won a playoff game in 23 years. We haven't won a division since 2008. It's frustrating as hell. We're not getting the results we want. But what I'll argue is that we have a great coaching staff, a great roster. We have great flexibility. We have a young roster. The future is going to be bright. And we have a brand and a franchise that's one of the best brands and franchises in the league.
And we got some of the best facilities, and you saw that NFLPA report card too, right?
And that's what I'm saying. We are now becoming the Apple of the NFL, where people want to go work, the cool place with technology that's amazing to go to. Every day feels like we are becoming that elite, best-in-class organization that people want to be a part of, despite not winning any playoff games. Can you imagine what happens when this team starts to find ways to win in the postseason? Like, it's just going to continue to be like a snowball going downhill. That's why, I think sometimes when you make predictions and you're covering football, and I'm saying you're just in general terms, like me, I was a year ahead of my expectations with the Dolphins, where now, even despite losing Christian Wilkins, I'd argue that they're a better team right now than they were last year, because not only I know we lost Wilkins and Hunt, but we can't forget the amount of injuries that decimated this team last year. So we're going to be healthier. I just think the Dolphins are a better team right now than they were at this time at the end of the season, and they're going to have the draft and post June with $30 million and an arsenal of draft picks in the next year. Where if Chris Grier gets an inkling to say, you know what, I might flip a second round pick and go get Quentin Nelson because the Colts aren't in win now mode, and Quentin Nelson's a guard that they don't want. They could probably make a move like that if they wanted to.
We got 1,300 people watching on X and about 630 watching on YouTube right now. We have about 1,940 people. We thank y'all for tuning in.
Absolutely.
So let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted to finish off there. Another portion of that article said discussions are expected to continue. That tells you kind of where we're headed here. So,
Right.
let's get into this, and let's get into some draft talk, Neal. And an interesting article. We've gone over him, Tony Pauline, on this channel and what he's doing with Sportskeeda recently, because he's been having a lot of good updates coming out of pro days. So we were interested in Georgia State linebacker, and he had some info on Latu as well. So continuing on with that, coming out of the Texas Pro Day, interesting thing, we were talking about Mitchell, right? It said Mitchell dropped a few passes, and his inconsistency and streakiness is a drawback. The word on Mitchell from Pro Day was unanimous. He has an NFL body and great upside, and if he ever puts it all together, he'll be a number one receiver. So there you go. AFC teams, but this is what we're here for. AFC teams hunt for Ja'Tavion Sanders. Neal, you remember I put out my first mock draft, hitting the simulators. And who did I take? Troy Fautanu at 21 and Ja'Tavion Sanders at 55, right? Because he's another guy I've been big upping if we can't get Brock Bowers, because everyone knows I'm a huge Brock Bowers guy. And this is what was said. Almost a half dozen tight end coaches, as well as Miami Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel, general manager Chris Grier, were on hand for Ja'Tavion Sanders, a.k.a. JT Sanders is what you'll hear people call him as well. Sanders was smooth and caught the ball well, something he did his entire career for Texas. The Patriots, Colts, and Texans met with Sanders at length, as did the Dolphins, but he continues to go on about the Dolphins. While McDaniel and Grier took in all pass-catching workouts, they were on hand specifically for Ja'Tavion Sanders, a player that Tony Pauline has mocked to them at pick 21 on two separate occasions.
Wow. And I'll say this because I know Tony. For those who don't know, I used to cover the draft for Pro Football Network, and Tony Pauline ran the draft channel for Pro Football Network, and amazing mentor, one of the best draft minds in the business. I can tell you that I know from behind the scenes that Tony Pauline is very, very connected. I'll put it like that. And he knows what he's talking about. And when I saw him draft Ja'Tavion Sanders in a mock draft in round 1, that I don't think that's going to happen at pick 21. But that shows me that the Dolphins and him been linked before this recent pro day.
Yeah.
And this cements it even more what we're seeing, because I think if it's a trade back scenario, he's an option. But look, man, again,
he's a freak though, bro. That athleticism, like, there's not a massive canyon of a gap between him and Bowers. And this kind of goes on to that, Neal. If they're this high on Ja'Tavion Sanders, how high are they on Brock Bowers if Brock Bowers starts falling out of the top 15?
Yeah, well, look, dude, and what I think Ja'Tavion Sanders is going to be there at 55 or in that range. I really do. And again, you do a mock draft, you put the pieces together, man, and like tight ends just don't fly off the board all the time. And I'm not saying it's definitely, but I just think that Ja'Tavion Sanders, look, Jonnu Smith is a great football player, and I like him a lot. I don't think Jonnu Smith prevents you from adding because here's why.
One of those two guys, no.
You had the worst tight end room in football. And if you go into the season with Ja'Tavion Sanders, Jonnu Smith, and Durham Smythe, you might have one of the better tight end rooms in football. So I would say that it's one of those things that keep an eye on. The only two people that we know the Miami Dolphins had 2 formal meetings with are Sanders and Latu from UCLA. That's it. So far that we know. We know they've had formals with Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier. They've been kind of hush-hush on some of them.
Well, they were super high on Devin Achane last year, right?
Yep.
Super high. They snuck him in for a private visit no one knew about, but I did have a plug that knew about it, and the plug didn't tell me until after we drafted Achan, and he didn't tell me because he's like, I knew how high you're on it, and I knew you wouldn't keep a lid on it, but they snuck him in without anyone knowing, because that's how McDaniel wanted to take him in the second round.
Yeah, well, listen to this. I'm going to give you some height and weights. So this is Jatavian Sanders, 6'4", 245 pounds.
And
You
he's a
know, so
freak.
here's another guy, 6'5", 253 pounds. Same height, 8 pounds heavier. It's a guy that reminds me a lot of Jatavian Sanders, Antonio Gates. Like that, to me, could be the type of player that Sanders is. And that's a lot of praise. I think Gates was snubbed from the Hall of Fame this year, to be honest. I really am a big fan of Jatavian Sanders, man. And like I'm preparing people right now, right?
Runs a 4.69 too at
You,
245.
if they walk away and it's Latu in round 1 and Jatavian Sanders in round 2 and we don't get an offensive line, don't be upset. It's a real possibility that they might go find an offensive lineman somewhere else and stick to their evaluations and draft the best players available in this draft.
I agree. Listen, what you do not reach, especially at 21, you stick to your board, you stick to BPA, you stick to your premium positions. Like that, that's just how you don't waver. I'm a big proponent of not wavering.
Well, in reason, let's put it this way. Not only did Chris Grier go, the head coach went. The head coach.
Yeah. Well, did you see who was in the pictures? Did you notice who was in the pictures with them?
I saw McDaniel and Grier.
And Frank Smith, but guess who else was there? John Embry.
Was he really?
I brought it up yesterday. I showed the picture where Embry was in a picture, and I said, are they there for Jatavian Sanders? Because why is Embry there? And remember, Frank Smith helped with Waller. So you got 2 tight end minds there as well.
That's a good catch, man, because that's big. I'm telling you, like, head coaches don't always go to the pro days, man. It's like they like Jatavian
Dude, it feels
Sanders.
like they made the Xavier Worthy with McDaniel. They made that the smoke screen because everyone knows he loves speed. That's what it seems like they were trying to do. Right. And then don't remember Byron Murphy and Trevondre Sweater there, and we got a need on the defensive line as well.
And we've talked about this on the show, and things have changed a little bit. The variables have changed a little bit. Now the Panthers sit with 2 high second-round picks. And I know they got Deontay Johnson. That seems like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. I doubt they're going to pay him big money to retain him. They still need to build weapons. This is such a big year for Bryce Young's development, where he was a number 1 pick. He looked like trash last year. The guy number 2, CJ Stroud's already elevating to a top 10 quarterback. The Panthers went out. They overpaid Robert Hunt. They overpaid Damian Lewis to build a wall in front of Bryce Young. They have Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen. They still need a go-to number 1 young receiver in this offense, and that's in their offense. If I'm the Dolphins and I get a call from the Carolina Panthers, it goes like this: we'll give you 21.
Or they want one of those 2 tight ends, Neil.
Who's that?
Carolina.
Oh yeah, I see. They could.
Tommy Tremblay ain't exactly lighting it up.
Well, let's just say that we say, all right, we'll give you 21 and a 2025 third. And we don't have to give the official pick yet, right?
Oh, yeah, because we can give them the comp. Yeah.
Because we can give them a comp pick.
Yeah.
And in exchange, we want picks 33 and 39.
Fucking, I would do that. Let's go right now.
Then we'd have 33, 39, and 55.
55. You could do some damage there.
And, dude, you might even be able to get Chop Robinson at 33. And
I don't know if he makes it out of the 20s.
Well, and here's what makes that trade even better. The reason, when the lights go off on Thursday night, and it's day 2 of the draft, and you're sitting with the first pick the next day, whoever didn't get the quarterback is going to want Michael Penix. They're going to want Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
They might give you a king's ransom for that pick. And let's say it's the Raiders, and they didn't get a quarterback that they want. I would trade down from 33 to 44 and pick up another third if possible, and just really build this team in the trenches, which you can do.
I don't know. I'd pick at 33 and 39. I'd start picking there.
Sure. No, but
because what we talked about, there's probably going to be good talent that's pushed down to 33 because of the positions we've talked about being taken. But anyways, right. I mean, we're talking in such a hypothetical because, this is why I kind of laugh at these mock drafts where these people do like 2, 3, or 4 trades. Has Grier shown anyone evidence that he's willing to move around more than once? No. And all he's
No.
shown is he's willing to move backwards with what he did on the Knowing Monogamy. He hasn't shown us the willingness to move up and go get a blue chip guy or someone that they view highly, right? So we're hoping that changes. Knight says Grier worked magic with the Chubb restructure. He says, I think he likes drafting high ceiling, low floor. Amarius Mims. That's why I keep saying Amarius Mims.
Amarius
okay.
Mims, a beast, though, man.
Yeah. But you get the feeling that's a Chris Grier guy, bro. Every time I watch him. Tricky Torres says, hashtag draft Leggett at 55. Let's pray. Leggett might be gone by 55.
Yeah, if he was there.
The way the NFL's starting to fall in love with him now. You know what I mean?
I'd be a little shocked if he was there at 55. I got to be honest. I love him. I'm with you. I have him as the 5th best receiver in this draft. I think you do too. I have him as 5th.
And I got McConkey as 6 and
Me
80
too.
as 7. 80 as 7. 80 Mitchell 7.
Yeah, I do too. And then Worthy at 8. That's exactly how I have it.
Yeah. So, all right. Finally here, I wanted to show you this, Neil. Let's get your thoughts. I'll show the picture. You already, everyone watching me knows how I'm going to feel, so they can hear me after you.
No, I saw it. I don't care about 2,000 yards. I care about
Shout out to Brittany on Twitter. And she scratched it out and said Super Bowl winnings. She scratched out the 2 games in Super Bowl winning season coming.
Well,
like
look,
we're already again doing this song and dance, Neil. We're already you're starting to look like an individual now, brother.
For 2 years, we've pounded the table about how good Tyreek Hill's been for this football team on and off the football field, and I love him. I think he's the best player on this team.
In football, when you look at talent.
Yep, he's up there. I will say this loud and clear. I am very disappointed with the nonsense that he's surrounding himself in a season where he personally didn't deliver the magnitude that he could have, and the Miami Dolphins didn't. Like, from the backyard incident, like, to just so much stuff that we've seen. Like, I get it, man. You're a rich man. You want to live your life, and when you're out, trouble finds you, and that happens to people. Like, look, trouble finds me, man. When I go out, trouble likes to find me too. And then you look in the mirror and you realize that trouble likes to find you because you're part of the problem yourself. And I think it's one of those things that I'm not saying the Dolphins should trade Tyreek or anything like this, but I am saying that there has to be some level of communication internally with Tyreek right now to tone it down. There has to be. They have to, because it's
is McDaniel a accolade guy and he's kind of pushing it as well because he's mentioned it too. Remember, one of the first things he said to Tyreek when he met him was, I'm going to get you to 2,000 yards. He said that.
Yeah, and look, I don't mind having personal goals. I've told you people this. I have Post-its that I put on my mirror every week, and that's my goal for the week. Something I'm going to knock out every week. Something that's not, tying my shoe. Something that's a challenge. Try to hit it every week. Don't always hit my goals every week. It's just the way life is. I don't mind him having that 2,000 thing. What I want to hear from him is, yeah, I'm going to go aim for 2,000 yards, but what I care about more is taking this Miami Dolphins team and getting our first playoff win in 24 years. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear a team that comes in, and this is, again, we're going to go back to Odell Beckham and why I think it's so important. A guy like that can provide a lot of wisdom and a lot of guidance to people, even if they're around the same age and their peers. Like, I learned my best lessons from people that are my boys that I've been friends with for 30, 35, 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's life, man. And I think that you have a good room, good balance in the room with somebody that can bring it down. Because, look, I think everyone who's a young receiver on that Dolphins team looks up to Tyreek Hill. And how do you not? How would you not, if you're Jalen Waddle, not look up to the guy that's one of the most dominant, unique players to ever play that? Whether you love, hate, or indifferent about Tyreek, he's a one of one. There has never been a player like Tyreek Hill in football. I think he's a top 6-7 all-time NFL type of receiver. So how could you not look up to him? But he needs somebody also to look up to. And maybe a guy that comes in with the pedigree of Odell Beckham could be a strong enough personality to say, hey, yo, Tyreek, great. I get it. Stop chirping after the whistle. Get your ass back to the huddle. We got to drive to finish here. Like, I love that kind of shit, man, in football. So, I love Tyreek. I just wish he would tone it down a little bit, man, about this all-field stuff, the personal stuff.
Agreed.
Let's make it about the team. Let's make it about the organization that has provided you a great platform, and you've delivered. You're amazing. We love you. Let's just tone it down a little, man. Let's stay out of this all-field crap, because the last thing we want is to see you suspended for 2 games, for 4 games. That hurts. That helps nobody. Stay away. Don't get in any fights. You're Tyreek Hill. You got nothing to prove. You prove it on Sundays on the field that you're uncoverable. That's the only thing you need to prove, and then prove it when it's in the playoffs, and let's head into that way, man.
Yeah. Exactly. Guys, I want to thank y'all for coming through. We got about 1,575 on Twitter right now. We got about 650 on YouTube. We got well over 2,200 people in total coming through here. Appreciate all of you coming through. Listen, I'm going to be back very soon for all you guys. It was always a pleasure, Neal, to do this with you. And hopefully it's sooner than later that I'm back in front of your screens and we're talking about adding Odell Beckham Jr. and a legitimate third option to the wide receiver room. Please, as there's well over 2,200 of you, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new as we get closer to 15K. We got draft season on the way. My next big board coming out for all of you will be wide receiver because I still don't believe that's out of the realm of possibility here. So I'm going to be dropping wide receiver big board. Then we'll go to edge. Then after that, we're going to be doing offensive guard, offensive tackle, and safety or tight end at the way we're going here. So jumping from the usual 5 big boards every year to 6. Go check the one I dropped yesterday. All 22 of the top 5 players included in that in-depth evaluations, and go see what fits the Miami Dolphins in terms of defensive tackle and across that defensive line as they look to replace Raekwon Davis and Christian Wilkins. Again, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, fins up all day, every day until Margaritaville sends that cease and desist our way.